Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dolly. Good morning, Samantha, Beth, Norhana, Eduardo, Miss Love, Rose Ann, Christopher, Mohammed, Norhana, Norharem, Marev, Miss Esper, Miss Leilani, Hidayah, Norkisa, and of course, Miss Dolly and Fawaz. Can everybody hear me okay? Perfect. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Benedict.
Yes, clear. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so I wanted to start off this morning or breakout sessions on, everybody's got a different definition of financial wellness. And good morning, love. And so I want to kind of get an idea of what some of you have experienced in life, and because there's a lot of aspects to financial wellness, right? So I just wanted to get an idea of what some of your ideas of what financial wellness is. So perhaps we could have our first volunteer today on your idea of financial wellness, and then we can get into some of the statistics that we have pulled from a third party called LIMRA. So let's begin with, let's see, who had their hands raised earlier? Miss Dolly, your definition of financial wellness, or maybe it's an ongoing definition.
Let's see. To me, financial wellness is not exactly a ton of money, but just a certain sense of security that you're able to like I said, I'm sorry, my video's malfunctioning on me. I'm gonna have to switch gadgets, but that you're able to at least meet all your, with regardless of statistics of percentages of this is what you should have, this is what things should be. It's your personal comfort of where you are without stressing out over spending on how you spend to maintain your life by your personal standards. That's financial wellness to me.
That's great, and it's a great thing because we live in a world where most of us have the ability to define that, what that wellness looks like, because we don't all have to be millionaires, we don't all have to be, and it's defined by happiness too, right? And what is your definition of happiness, and how are we, and how we are able to.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll give an example. For example, I have my children are adults, and I remember one time chastising my youngest son because he couldn't afford certain things, and he simply responded to me. He goes, "Hey, Mom, I pay my bills on time," and he goes, "And you need," he says, "you need to understand that not everybody's standards are your standards." And he goes, I'm okay. And he just says, just rest assured, I'm okay where I'm at. I just simply can't afford to pay for that particular thing at that time. He goes, but that's not what's important to me, so I'm all right. I'm like, oh, okay. That was like an aha moment for me.
Yeah,
Here
it
I
is
am,
right.
Children. I was always like, I admit I was judgmental even with my own children, saying this wasn't enough or whatever, but he kind of put me in my place, and that kind of made me understand something. So that was good.
I can definitely relate to that, Dolly, because as a parent myself, I've got 3 children, and sometimes when it comes to teachable moments, we tend to project some of the things that we learned growing up. My parents were, of course, you were very tight on money, and so I can understand also, because they had hardships, and not that it was intentional for them to project that onto me. But, you know, they've learned some hard lessons. And I've always said, look, I learned this lesson for the both of us. Don't go ahead and don't repeat it, right? There's no sense in repeating it. So sometimes we do project some of those experiences that we have, and it perhaps sometimes it may have been a negative feeling, but we learn from it, you know. And so yes, we all have different ideas of financial wellness, and if we are lucky enough to be on the Zoom call on this session, then we might be lucky enough to have the opportunity to decide what that wellness looks like for us. In some parts of the world, of course, they are not given the luxury to be able to define what that wellness means. And so I want to be sensitive to that there are parts in the world where, you know, people are not born in the best circumstances and they are not able to define that for them, but they do have, you know, culture is something that's really important to that helps define financial wellness to that. So I'd like to speak to somebody. We'll get one more perspective on financial wellness. If I could get another volunteer to define what financial wellness means to them. So perhaps, let's see, Miss Love, are you on the line?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm learning so much by watching and listening. For me, it's kind of the ability to fix and plan your own financial status and the earnings that you have. Like me, as a caregiver, as a CNA, you know, it's not really that much to compare to a lot of working women or business people. But the way you handle your finances and be able to fix and like pay your bills and have the ability to save and to plan something good for the future for your children, be able to handle um, financial needs of your family. I think that is and be able to do it with your monthly earnings or your um, whatever you have financially. I think that is the financial wellness for me, that you able to do it on your own, not
Yes.
relying to a lot of entities or people to support you.
That's right. That's right. And that's fantastic that you brought that up, Miss Love, about having that independence, because part of the wellness is your independence, and with independence comes some control over how you are going to spend the money. Or maybe I want to buy a Louis Vuitton this month. You know what I mean? I don't have to ask somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and that's okay. Again, everybody has their different definitions of that, which is fantastic, and as we should. So and culture is a big part of that, you know what I mean? And how much does the culture emphasize financial independence or not, or, you know, on a scale, right? And we have to be sensitive to that too, and every culture is different. So because we are you know, part of, you know, COFAC, and here in the United States, you know, we do some of us value independence here. Some of us, this is why we immigrated, to have better opportunities and control. And that is the Filipino American dream.
Exactly.
You know? And so I wanted to share some statistics that, and of course, just to be sensitive, everybody has their own financial wellness, but I want to be able to give a little bit of a perspective on what the numbers, hard numbers are. Again, the title is financial wellness. Now, we may fall within this number and some of us may fall outside of it. So there is a study, it's called it's LIMRA, LIMRA, and they are big in the financial services industry, and they do a lot of studies and statistics. My role in my company as the CEO is to make sure that our company is positioned not reactively, but proactively as the market changes, right, on the financial aspects of things. And so I like to look at numbers and where we are trending, right? Where do we fall there? So this study is the Financial Wellness Index report that was done last year. So this is a number that they got based on gender, based on the generation, your marital status, your race and ethnicity, your LGBTQ status, employment status, and your income and education. So I want to quickly start. These numbers are based on the American scores. So the average American on a score and I wish I could share these slides with you, but in any ways, if you'd like me to share the slides with you, I can email you and send them over. So the average American on a score of 1 to 10 is scored 5.57 on what they feel like they are financially well, right? And so then you can define what does financially well, what does that mean? You know, and so there's definitions, of course, on how much money you're making, what is your job, and what is your status. So the average American says that they scored, so they got about 800 people on this study that they talked to, and the score for the average American is 5.57. Now, looking over here, now let's define men and women in the American house, in the USA. If the average American is 5.57, then the American woman, they are scoring at 5.11 out of a 10 scale. That's how they feel they are on the financial wellness scale. Now, on the men, American men say they are financially well out of 6.1 out of the 10. That's the score, right? So I'm just going to go over these numbers real quick, and I'll tell you what that means. And then I'm going to go to the next one on the marital status. Okay. Again, remember the average American is 5.57. That's the number. Now, if they are separated, these people who have said that they are separated, that they feel they are financially well, and then that number is 3.62 out of 10 score, out of 10 score. If they are living with a partner, the score goes up to 4.64. So, you know, some things to think about, maybe they're sharing more bills together, so they can live a little bit better. Single or never been married scored slightly higher at 4.68. Divorced scored 5.69, which is actually more than the American average, which is interesting. Married couples or civil unions are scoring at 6.14 out of 10. And interestingly, what I found was someone who is widowed is scored at 6.61. They are saying that out of 10, they feel 6.61 about their financial wellness. So I'm going to pause here real quick. Do we have any questions on those numbers or any comments? Okay, I'll move on to the next. And so we'll go to race and ethnicity. Again, average American is 5.57. Black and African Americans are scoring at 4.8. White is scoring at 5.7, and Asian Americans have the highest score in terms of financial wellness at 5.91% out of 10. Okay. Let's see, let me go here. Interestingly enough, if somebody who has an LGBTQ status, they are scoring at 4.14, in terms of financial wellness. This is what's being reported. And if they are non-LGBTQ, they are scoring at 5.72. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to go into employment. There's a lot of different scores here, but if they are not employed, they are scoring at 4.07% in terms of how they feel about being financially well. And let's see, and the highest score here is somebody who is retired but not working, and they are scoring at 7.38 out of 10. Okay. And then in between there, there's student, self-employed, retired, and working. That's on the scale of 10 again. And then let's see here, education. If they have a high school education or less, they are scoring at 3.8 out of 10. And if they have postgraduate degree, they are 6.50%. Interestingly enough, I made the assumption to think, oh, they have a high degree, they're doctors, lawyers, and things like that. You would think that they would score really high. But with that, obviously having a postgraduate degree, it does incur a lot of expensive, perhaps student loans, right? Having a doctoral degree is very, very expensive. So I could see why instead of scoring an 8 out of 10, they would score 6.5 on a scale of 10 in terms of feeling financially well. They have spent some money on their education. Let's see here. Now, so this just goes on to what is the average. And so in terms of numbers, in terms of what is that number that a lot of Americans are saying, what is that number that makes me feel good? And so when they did this study, they had Americans essentially scored, once they hit that $75,000 a year income, that's when you start seeing the scores go up in terms of how they feel financially well. I mean, that could be, again, a multiple of things, right? Because, you talk about the economy and then, what kind of jobs, what kind of people are scoring or able to earn above $75,000 a year. They're able to pay their bills, maybe take vacations at that number. But again, that score, $75,000 a year, is what was, in terms of just in this study, they are saying that most people feel they are financially well. But, to, Miss Love's point and some of our speakers here today, it is definitely a different experience from everybody else. So I'd like to open it up to questions at this point.
Hi, Miss Dominique.
Yes, Miss Love.
I just want to hear again. Is it the bracket of um, of being financially well? The It's also in the income, right? The income that we have.
Mhm.
I mean, like the bracket. If you're like what you said, doctorate, um, um, big family, and a lot of material things that you have. You're paying student loans and all those things. Um, their bracket is higher,
Mhm.
and then like me, or some like me that are like just a normal employee, or self-employed, that we don't have student loans, we don't have luxury cars and big houses and mortgage.
Mhm.
um, so our bracket is also, we feel like we're we're well also, like those kind
Yes,
of
no,
things,
that is a
right?
good point. That is a good point because obviously, as they say, the more money, the more, the more bills, the more,
Yeah,
things. It's a positive correlation. The more money you have, the more you tend to spend, right? And so, it is interesting to see that those who have higher degrees, higher education, they are themselves reporting that yes, they are perhaps one of the highest on the bracket, but they don't feel like they're at a number 8 out of 10, or a 9 out of 10, so it is quite interesting to see that, because I made the assumption too. I was like, oh, if you have a high degree, then you should, have a lot of money. But then you think about it, is the Mercedes is expensive, the upkeep on the Mercedes, the
yeah.
insurance on the Mercedes, the liability, if it breaks, there's all sorts of things.
But in layman's term, mass. I mean, they're more financially well
Mhm.
than the normal, like uh, the one that only renting um,
Mhm.
a house,
Mhm.
or doing their
Mhm.
things in a lower, not
Mhm.
I don't see, yeah, just a lower bracket.
Mhm. Mhm.
but
Yeah,
but
and if
for
you
us,
look at
that's what we think, that, like, oh, they own a business, oh, they're well, I mean, we can compete on them in financial
Mhm.
wellness.
Mhm. That's correct, because if you think about it, the more income you have, the higher the tax bracket, right? So
Right.
that means your taxes are higher too.
Mm.
So there's a lot of people think, this is my personal opinion on this, not that it matters, but sometimes renting is better. Because if you look at it, you're not paying the property tax. Yes, it is good to build equity. That is, you should strive for that. But it really depends on the situation. If you are a student and you are paying student loans and you have all these things, then if you're owning a house, it really doesn't make sense because you have to pay the property taxes um, on that, and then the maintenance and all that sense. And sometimes it makes more sense to just rent. Um, and so again, it is very different on what the financial wellness is, depending where that person is in their life, and what does that mean for them. And so it is interesting because as a business owner myself, and I'm sure some of you are business owners on this call, you understand that now you have to pay taxes on your business too. Like I'm contributing to the economy and I'm helping the community, but why am I getting taxed this way? And so I encourage everybody to, talk with a really good CPA or somebody to help mitigate some of those expenses, because your business is your retirement. You don't have, I mean, if this is it, this is what you do for a living. You don't have an employer. So really interesting numbers that came out for, and it, it's still, the women are still beneath men in terms of what they feel like um, their financial wellness is, and perhaps um, that has something to do with the fact that we have to take care of children. We're usually the ones that have to take care of our parents at the same time. So there's a lot of economic liabilities for a woman. And so I could see why they would score underneath men in terms of that. And so that's definitely something to take into uh, to think about, why women tend to get paid less, and yet somehow we have the bigger economic liability and health, if we have children, because we're taking care of them and we give birth and all these things. So I think it's essential that for me, my personal opinion again is to help women more and give more resources and support to those women, especially on the financial wellness part. And so part of that, of course, is networking and really talking to other women business owners or other women in general who are trying to make it and work and juggle all these things and still somehow find a life for themselves. So I believe that should be, we have a few more minutes here, and I will open it up to questions and comments on financial wellness. There's, really, and sorry, one more thing. Those who are retired and not working have scored highest in terms of feeling financially well. And I could make the assumption, we could make the assumption that perhaps they've saved up enough money or invested their money throughout their lifetime to the point where they don't need to work. And so they're okay. They're feeling financially well, which is a really significant number. And then underneath that is those who are retired but are still working. So really interesting numbers that came out here, and that I didn't think was, for instance, it's the if you have the higher the degree, you would think that they feel more financially well. And actually, now that I think about it, it's not. I have a cousin who is a pharmacist, and he has incurred a really big student loan bill. And so, and he's about to get married and, buy a house and all these things. So, having difficulty buying a house because those student loans that he's taken out to become a doctor of pharmacy is really, really expensive. So, I understand now why sometimes perhaps, that degree isn't, it's a status, but at the same time, it's like, I don't really feel so good if I have to pay a really big bill unless your student loans were paid for you, which would be fantastic. So in any case, if we don't have any more questions or comments, Benedict, I think we can go ahead and end our session here.
All right, but for